My name is Jane Eyre, and my story does not begin with sunshine or the comfort of a warm fireplace. It begins in the gray, suffocating atmosphere of Gateshead Hall. I was an orphan, left to the care of my Aunt Reed. She was a woman of cold manners and a heart that felt no warmth for a child like me. I lived among my cousins, John, Eliza, and Georgiana. They were the masters of the house, and I was merely a shadow that moved along the walls, trying not to be noticed. My uncle had promised on his deathbed that I would be looked after, but that promise had long since been buried with him. I was constantly reminded of my place. "Jane," my aunt would say with a sharp, dismissive look, "you are an outsider. You are poor, you are plain, and you owe us everything." I had no friends, no toys to play with, and no kind words to hold on to. I learned to find my own world in books. I would sit for hours behind the heavy, velvet curtains of the library, reading stories of distant lands and shipwrecks. In those pages, I felt free, but as soon as the curtain moved and I stepped back into the room, the cold reality of my loneliness returned, darker and heavier than before. The worst part of my life at Gateshead was my cousin, John Reed. He was a boy of 14, spoiled and cruel. He knew that I had no one to protect me, and he used that to his advantage. He would call me a dependent and tell me that I had no right to be in his house. One afternoon, while I was hidden in my favorite spot in the library, he found me. "Who gave you permission to be here?" he shouted. He took the book I was reading and threw it at me with all his strength. I fell to the floor, my head striking the heavy wooden door. The pain was intense, but what I felt in my heart was even stronger. It was anger. I had always been quiet, but something inside me snapped. "You are a wicked, cruel boy!" I screamed at him. He lunged at me, and we fought. My aunt came rushing into the room. She didn't see her son's cruelty, she only saw my rebellion. She grabbed me by the arm and dragged me up the stairs to the Red Room. The Red Room was a place that everyone in the house avoided. It was where my uncle had died, and it had been kept locked ever since. It was a large, cold room with a giant bed, heavy curtains, and a mirror that seemed to watch me in the dim light. They locked the door from the outside, and I was left in complete silence. The shadows on the wall grew longer and more distorted. I felt a terrible, icy dread. I imagined that I saw the ghost of my dead uncle, watching me from the dark corners of the room. My heart raced, my breathing became fast and shallow, and the sheer terror of the isolation made me faint. When I finally opened my eyes, I was in my own bed. The kind apothecary, Mr. Lloyd, was there, but he couldn't change the heart of my aunt. She wanted me gone, and she soon had her wish. She contacted a man named Mr. Brocklehurst, the director of Lowood School. I remember the day he arrived. He was a tall, thin man in a long black coat. He stood over me like a giant, his face stern and unyielding. "Do you know where the wicked go when they die?" he asked me. I was terrified, but I answered honestly, "They go to hell." He seemed pleased by the fear in my eyes. He told me that Lowood was a place where sinners were punished and where pride was stripped away. I didn't care. Anything was better than the daily cruelty of Gateshead. The journey to Lowood was long. The carriage ride felt like a passage into a different world. As we traveled, the familiar countryside disappeared, and we entered a landscape of bleak, gray mountains and thin, shivering trees. When we arrived at the school, it was a massive stone building that looked more like a prison than a school. It was cold, damp, and smelled of wood smoke and suffering. I was 10 years old, and as the heavy iron gate closed behind me, I knew that my life had changed forever. There would be no more protection, no more hiding behind curtains. I was on my own. Life at Lowood was defined by endurance. We were woken up at 5 in the morning by a loud, piercing bell. The hallways were so cold that the water in our basins was often covered in a thin layer of ice. We washed in freezing water, dressed in thin, scratchy clothes, and marched in silence to the dining hall. Our food was often burnt porridge or bread that was hard and sour. We were always hungry, always cold, and always tired. But it was in the middle of this grey existence that I met Helen Burns. She was a girl in my class, and she was unlike anyone I had ever known. One freezing day, I saw her standing in the courtyard for hours as punishment for a mistake she hadn't even made. She didn't weep. She didn't look angry. She stood there, perfectly still, as if her mind were in a place far away from the biting wind. Later, I approached her. "How can you be so patient?" I asked. Helen looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold a deep, ancient wisdom. She told me, "Jane, the world is too full of pain to add more to it by being angry. If you forgive those who hurt you, you free yourself." Those words became my anchor. She showed me that kindness was a choice, even when life offered us nothing but hardship. She taught me the power of the mind and the beauty of resilience. In the dark, cold classrooms of Lowood, through the long hours of study and the quiet moments of shared friendship, I finally felt that I was more than just a burden to others. I was a person with a mind of my own, a heart that could love, and a spirit that, like Helen's, could not be easily broken.